Yeah.
You're gonna put up the verse so everybody can see it. It's yeah, 13. There we go. Okay. Alright, you can put it up. All right. So Brahma
Brahma,
Uvacha
Vacha,
Ata
Ta,
Tasya
Ta,
Ushatim
Tim,
Devim Rishikuyam
Yam,
Saraswatim
Yasati,
Na
Na,
Ashvadya
Vadya,
Manu
Manya,
Dastanam Tesham
Yesha,
Atma Api Atripyata. Prabhu, for some reason I can't hear them.
the echo.
Api. Okay, there you go.
It's
Oh, I
read
should
the
say
Somebody
verse
go read the verse twice.
For some reason I can't hear them.
The echo.
There we go. Okay.
It's not echoing anymore. You good.
All right, we got it. Okay.
And then sorry, hold on.
Yeah, it was just up. How you go to the?
I don't know. I got it this way.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Brahmovacha
Vacha,
Atatasho Satim Devim
Tatasya Shatim Devim,
Rishikoyam Sarasvatim
Rishi Kulyam Saraswatim,
Nashvadya Manyudastanam
Vajamanyu Dashtanam,
Tesham Atmapya Tripyata
Shamatma Pyatripyata,
Brahmovacha
Vacha,
Atatasho Satim Devim
Tatasya Shatim Devim,
Rishikoyam Sarasvatim
Rishi Kulyam Saraswatim,
Nashvadya Manyudastanam
Naswadyamanyu Dashtanam,
Tesham Atmapya Tripyata
Amatma Pyatripyata,
Brahmovacha
Vacha,
Atatasyo Satim Devim
Tatasya Shatim Devim,
Rishikoyam Sarasvatim
Kulyam Saraswatim,
Nashvadya Manyudastanam
Naswadyamanyu Dashtanam,
Tesham Atmapya Tripyata.
Amatma Pyatripyata.
Please repeat.
Brahmovacha,
Brahmovacha
Tatasya Shatim Devim,
Atatasyo Satim Devim
Rishi Kulyam Saraswatim,
Rishikoyam Sarasvatim
Aswadyamanyu Dashtanam,
Nasvadya Manyudastanam
Amatma Pyatripyata,
Tesham Atmapya Tripyata Brahmovacha Atatasyo Satim Devim
Rishi
Rishikoyam
Kulyam Saraswatim,
Sarasvatim Nasvadya Manyudastanam Tesham Atmapya Tripyata. Okay. Brahma, Lord Brahma,
Brahma,
Uvacha
Vacha,
said,
said,
Ata
Ta,
now,
now,
Tasya
Tasya,
of the Supreme Lord.
the Supreme Lord,
Usatim,
Ushatim,
lovely.
lovely.
Devim,
Devim,
shining.
shining.
Rishikulyam,
Vishnukulyam,
like a series of Vedic hymns.
like a series of Vedic hymns.
Sarasvatim,
Saraswatim,
speech.
peace.
Na,
Na,
not.
na.
Ashvadya,
Vadya,
hearing.
hearing.
Manu,
Manu,
anger.
anger.
Dashtanam,
Ishtana,
bitten.
din.
Tesham,
Sham,
of those sages.
of those sages.
Atma,
Atma,
the mind.
mind.
Api,
Api,
even though.
even though.
Achipyata,
Chipita,
satiated. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: Brahma continued, even though the sages had been bitten by the serpent of anger, their souls were not satiated with hearing their Lord's lovely and illuminating speech, which was like a series of Vedic hymns. Alright, so we're going to go to text 14. I'll just chant this, and then I'll read the translation purport. Satim vyadaya shinvanto lagvim gurvarta gavaram vigaya gada gambiram navidustak chikir shitam. Translation: the Lord's excellent speech was difficult to comprehend because of its momentous import and its most profound significance. The sages heard it with wide open ears and pondered it as well. But although hearing, they could not understand what he intended to do. Purport: it could be understood that no one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead in speaking. There's no difference between the Supreme Person and his speeches, for he stands on the absolute platform. The sages tried with wide open ears to understand the words from the lips of the Supreme Lord, but although his speech was very concise and meaningful, the sages could not completely comprehend what he was saying. Thus, they could not even comprehend the purport of the speech or what the Supreme Lord wanted to do, nor could they understand whether the Lord was angry or pleased with them. Okay. Om Ajnanatimmiranda Shrikanandana Salakaya Chakshu Nikamina Tasma Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Vishnu Sthapitam Bhutale Samayamayam Tapati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sheta Parakamalam Shri Guru Bam Sakyatam Sahavinatitam Samsajivam Sadvaitam Savadutta Patitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sakya Shri Hey Krishna Karna Srimati Sapata Gopa Shiva Pika Kanta Arana Masiti Tapika Taka Kira David Nana Shri Vanchika Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Buddhade Shimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Dinamine Bhuvijayati Vikaso Bhakti Purva Tenjaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Buddhade Shimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Dinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaur Vani Vajrayane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Kadara Shivasi Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So these two verses are being spoken. The first one, Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is speaking about how the sages were bitten by the serpent of anger. So the Lord, after Jai and Vijay were cursed by the four Kumaras, the Lord came on the scene, and he spoke. He spoke to pacify the four Kumaras and to mitigate the situation. And the verse number 13, it talks about how the sages were bitten by the serpent of anger. So this anger is, although the sages, the four Kumaras, they are ultimately, they have their own sampradaya, right? but we can still learn from this pastime how ultimately anger is just a manifestation of lust, right? From lust, extreme lust, comes anger, as we know in the Bhagavad Gita. So this verse is interesting because it says the Lord's lovely illuminating speech. It was able to pacify the sages. It was able to mitigate their anger. You know, when the Lord speaks, everybody becomes. You know, those who are not envious of the Lord, they become attracted to the Lord's speech. The four Kumaris, they were, although they're impersonalists, they weren't offensive. This is kind of important. This is a side note, but not all impersonalists are Mayavadis. It's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita that those impersonalists who are not offensive towards the Supreme Lord, they are able to, when they hear the speeches of the Lord, they're able to become devotees. But when impersonalists are offensive towards Krishna, then they will not relish Krishna's speech in thousands of births. So this is an important distinction between, you know, Brahmavadis and Mayavadis. So the four Kumars, ultimately their persons were Brahmavadis, but they weren't offensive. So because they weren't offensive, they were able to actually get some type of bliss by hearing the speech of the Supreme Lord. And in verse 13 is mentioned how his speech is illuminating. The Lord's speech, because it's coming from the Supreme Lord, anything he says, any import in the Bhagavad Gita, any verse in itself can give us full realization about the absolute truth. Even verses that we might think like very insignificant, like, you know, Krishna might say, you know, they know sminata. He might just say something simple like, you know, as a soul progresses, something very simple, basic philosophy. Any one of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita can fully give us full transcendental knowledge because it's all on the transcendental platform. So it's very important actually that we study the Bhagavad Gita very acutely, and we should memorize slokas because Bible says that when you memorize slokas, actually your intelligence becomes fixed, and you can become free from lust by memorizing by meditating on these slokas. So it's very important actually to memorize Bhagavad Gita slokas. Even might say, oh, this verse is important, this verse isn't important. I'm memorizing this verse, but not this verse. This is actually an illusion. All the verses in the Bhagavad Gita are very important. Some devotees say that, oh, that's just like a lesser verse. That verse is not so important. No, this is illusion. Anything spoken by the Supreme Lord is illuminating. It's illuminating speech. And the Bhagavad Gita, although it's just a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, it's a series of Vedic hymns. It's the essence of all the Vedas, even though it's just a conversation by Krishna. And it's illuminating. And I think it's in the 5th chapter, it talks about how when somebody's coming to knowledge, like the sun, when the sun comes out, everything else, all illusion, essence becomes removed. All fog becomes removed from one's consciousness when they come into the sunlight of knowledge. You can be outside. So there are certain diseases that can be cured by the early in Ayurveda. Certain diseases, they can be cured actually by early morning sunrise. By being outside in the early morning, you can actually cure certain diseases. So if your doctor tells you go outside in the early morning, right, because you can be fully absorbed in the sun, but you're just in your room and the sun rays just happen to come in the room, and you're like, oh, the sun's in my room, you know, I'm getting the sun is there, I can get the effect. You won't actually get the full effect. Although the sun rays is not different from, you have to step into the sunshine. So similarly, you have to step into the light of the Bhagavad Gita. We shouldn't just become armchair speculators, as Srila Prabhupada says. We should actually step into the light of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And you see how people in the beginning of the nectar instruction is mentioned how these frog-like philosophers are always croaking. They're croaking, and what are they doing? They're inviting death. They're not saying anything of substance, right? I was just at this Mind, Body, Spirit Expo, and I was talking to this one vendor, and he was studying ancient Kemet philosophy, And he was speaking all these esoteric stuff, but ultimately he had no substance because he completely missed the point that we're not here to enjoy, we're here to surrender to Krishna. So these philosophers, they might sound very pleasing and they might sound very eloquent in their speech, but it has literally no significance. It's literally just like, as Prabhupada says, it's like the frog is inviting death by the serpent of time. So if your speech is not connected to the topics of the Supreme Lord, it's ultimately a big waste of time. One of the devotees should be silent. And being silent doesn't mean we shouldn't talk. It means that we shouldn't speak nonsense. We should speak things pertaining to the Supreme Lord. But like I said, these frog-like philosophers, these people on YouTube and Instagram, they're speaking so many things. And the thing is, people want to be bewildered by this stuff. People are literally like, what's his guy name? Andrew Tate. He's speaking nothing but nonsense. Literally, he speaks nothing but complete nonsense. But somehow he has millions of followers because people want to hear this fluff, this ignorance in the material world. And then when you try to speak topics of the Bhagavad Gita, they're not interested because they're completely covered over by the modes of material nature. They're not in the sunlight. They're still in the darkness of ignorance. So in this pastime, this is still the verse I'm talking about, verse 13. We should take up the example of the sages, and we should not be satiated with hearing. It says that their souls were not satiated with hearing the Lord's loving and illuminating speech, right? So these Bhagavatam classes, I'm reading Srimad Bhagavatam every day, reading Bhagavad Gita every day. We should never become satiated with it. It's not like mundane literature. In school, I don't know about you guys, but I never liked reading books growing up. We used to have book fairs and all this other stuff. You read it, you might read a couple of chapters, throw the book down, because it's like you get a headache or something. It's like it's not fulfilling at all. It's just completely just mundane education. All these great stories of #1 bookseller or whatever. You read it, and you become more disturbed. You read these stuff, you don't become satisfied at all. So when we're selling books, people are like, oh no, I don't like to read. And I tell people, this is not the literature that's on the material platform, this reading, because I understand that. I tell them too, listen, I also don't like reading nonsense. I understand you, because they think we're giving them, they're so used to nonsense, that when we give them something of substance, they reject it. They correlate it with other types of nonsense they've been reading their whole lives. But this literature is not on the mundane platform. When you read it, I've had experiences when you read these books attentively, you can get full bliss by reading Prabhupada's books. It's completely on a different caliber than this mundane education. That's why Prabhupada says his education is slaughterhouses, because it completely fills your mind with garbage, right? But this literature is not on that platform. It's completely transcendental, and we shouldn't become satiated with it. It never should be a time where that's enough Bhagavatam class for today. That's enough reading for today. No, we should always be hankering more and more and more for this knowledge. It said, Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma Nasoshi Nakangchati. We shouldn't hanker, we shouldn't lament. Right, that's very true. We shouldn't hanker and lament on the material platform. We shouldn't hanker for material things, and we shouldn't lament when we lose things. However, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you see King Prataparudra, he's hankering for Lord Chaitanya's association, and he's lamenting that he doesn't have it. So this hankering and lamentation can be employed in Krishna consciousness. You should actually hanker for reading Prabhupada's books, and you should lament that of course, this is a high platform. It's not that you should artificially do it, but it can be used in Krishna service, but you should lament how you're not attracted to it. I mean, it's not artificial. It takes time. But however, the point is, you see King Prataparudra, he was hankering, he's lamenting, but his hankering and lamenting was purely spiritual, right? So we should actually hanker and lament to be fully immersed in these topics of the Bhagavata and Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. We should hanker for this. This is the proper use of hankering. If we're not hankering to be fully immersed in the topics of Krishna, naturally our hankering is going to go slightly, gradually towards material things. It's a gradual thing. So we should actually cultivate this hankering, this desire to fully be immersed in reading Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. We shouldn't waste a minute. And the thing is, even if we might be doing some service. So in this next verse, it says that the Lord's speech was difficult to comprehend. And the sages heard it and they pondered it. So that's the key. That's the key. You hear it, you hear these topics, then you ponder it. Throughout my day, I try to do this. I try to read something, and then while I'm doing service, I'm pondering what I read. And this is the proper means of this is proper use of your intelligence by pondering these subject matters. Sometimes it can feel very artificial, but you have to drag your mind back to transit into something. You have to do it sometimes by force. And this is the proper way, the proper deliberation. You have to deliberate upon these subject matters. So going to this next verse, it's very interesting. The sages, the four Kumaras, it's mentioned that, I'll just read the translation again. The Lord's excellent speech was difficult to comprehend because of its momentous import and its most profound significance. The sages heard it with wide open ears and pondered as well. But although hearing, they could not understand what he intended to do. So the Lord is coming to the sages and he's saying, oh, the offense is by Jai and Vijay, my servants, is I want to go upon this offense. Blame me, don't blame them. And the sages, although they're hearing it, it's very confusing. They don't really understand what the Lord is trying to get at, And we see how people, without going through the Guru Parampara, they might skip. I remember I was in DC. I was talking to this new Bhakta, and he was like, "Yeah, I read the whole Bhagavad Gita." I was like, "Oh, that's amazing! Wow!" And he was like, "Yeah, but I didn't read the purports. I only read the translation." I was like, "Okay, so what was your conclusion?" I swear on everything he said it. He said, "We are all one." Thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much, bro. You read the whole Bhagavad Gita. You didn't read Prabhupada's purports, and his conclusion was we are all one. So just see, when you try to go directly to Krishna without the Guru Parampara, you're going to be bewildered. You're not going to understand. You're not going to understand. You're going to be bewildered. And the sages, they are the leader of the Sampradaya. Eventually, they did come to realize what the Lord wanted to do. However, we should follow their example that first we have to hear wide open ears, right? And that's what they heard and they pondered wide open ears, but they couldn't understand it, right? But by proper deliberation and further inquiries from the Supreme Lord, they were able to understand. Similarly, when we don't understand things, we should submit our inquiries to the Guru. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, we have to inquire, make these inquiries. The whole Bhagavatam is literally filled with questions and answers. That's the whole Bhagavatam, is just questions and answers, actually. So we should never come to a point where I know everything, I don't need to ask any questions. People should ask questions to me. No, we should always be full of inquiries. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, actually. So yes, the Lord can be very bewildering at times. It's very hard to understand the Lord. And you see so many pastimes that's very bewildering. A couple pastimes that's coming to mind is when Krishna killed the washerman in Krishna book. If you think about it, it's like it's a washerman, he's just doing his job, and some little boys come up to him and say, "I want those clothes," and he's like, "Well, these are the king's clothes," and he just chops his head off. It's like, oh my God. And it's like, from the outside looking in, you're like, wow, that was pretty intense. Like, he just chopped this washerman's head off. He's just doing his job, He just chopped his head off. But it's mentioned that, and the washerman's previous birth is mentioned how he was actually, he was actually in Ram Leela, in Lord Ramachandra. It's mentioned in his past birth. When Sita came back to the kingdom, he was blaspheming Lord Ram, like, "Oh, just see, your wife has been touched by another man, just see." And then because of that, Lord Ramachandra actually decided to, renounce Sita and that whole pastime. But, so he was offensive beginning because he thought Sita was some material thing. He thought, the body of Sita was material. So he already kind of committed an offense, but the Lord kind of excused him, okay. But now in this pastime, he's the same person. Krishna said, okay, this guy is completely offensive. Every time I incarnate, he's not understanding my position, so he cuts his head off. But thing is, if you don't know the past behind this washerman, it's very bewildering. Why is Krishna acting like this? Another is Roma Harshana. even actually, when the curtains open, say somebody's giving Bhagavatam class and the curtains open, we're actually not supposed to bow down from the deities, right? We're supposed to just listen to Bhagavatam class. Timmy Roma Harshana, he was on the Vyasa-san and he was speaking, and Lord Brahman came in, and because Roma Harshana didn't bow down to Lord Balaram, he cut his head off too. It's like, what is very bewildering? The Lord just cutting people's head off because he didn't stand up. It's like, what the heck? It's like very bewildering. But we know the reason why he did that was because Roma Harshana, he didn't respect Lord Balaram as the Supreme Lord. And not only that is he's speaking on the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's speaking on Vedanta philosophy. So for a person to be on the Vyasa-san and to not recognize the Lord is actually very offensive. So whatever else he's saying is actually nonsense. So the Lord is actually protecting the hearers of Rama Harshana because he didn't actually recognize Balaram to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he cut his head off. So another one. I think I wrote it down. Oh yeah, I was mentioning King Pratapa. It's also like if you read that pastime with King Pratapa, it's like the King Pratapa, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Swarup Damodar, they all said to Lord Chaitanya how he's a fixed devotee. He's a very pure, elevated Vaishnava, right? And all he wants is to get some association with the Lord. All King Pratapa wanted was this little association with the Lord. But the Lord was so harsh to him. He was so harsh, right? But why? And it's very bewildering. It's like, why is the Lord so harsh to King Pratapa? It's like he has his associates saying he's a pure Vaishnava. He's willing to give up everything in his kingdom just to serve. Like, if you see the pain of King Pratapa because he couldn't see the Lord, it's like very intense. But we understand that because Lord Chaitanya he's trying to set a principle. He's trying to set an ideal that those in renounced orders should not overly associate with kings and gross materialists. Although it was very painful for King Pratapa, the Lord had to set that example. So the point I'm making is the Lord can be very bewildering to those who are conditioned. But for the devotees of the Lord, right, they can understand the actions and activities of the Lord. Why? Because ultimately it's coming from the Guru Parampara. We can only understand these things through the Guru Parampara. We cannot try to speculate on the absolute truth. We understand the import, why the Lord killed the washerman. We understand why the Balaram killed Roma Harshana. We understand why the Lord was so harsh to King Pratapa because of the Guru Parampara, ultimately. So we have to surrender to the Guru Parampara because that's the only means of actually understanding these very difficult pastimes. People, some offenders might say, oh, the Lord is full of contradictions. He does one thing, but he does the other. But actually, the Lord, there's no contradictions in the Lord, actually, right? Actually, the Lord is very understandable, but for the conditioned soul, he's full of contradictions, right? But for the liberated soul, they can understand each action, each movement, each word that the Lord does. They understand there's a deeper meaning behind every single thing that the Lord does. So I want to go back to that pastime. So, and this pretty much in this purport today, as far as understanding the Lord, is like I said, it can be very bewildering trying to understand the Lord and his activities. Right, and actually, I was just hearing that when Krishna killed the washerman, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he equates how the washerman represents Smartavad, and he equates Kamsa represents Mayavad. So Krishna, when he comes to sins, he destroys Smartavad and Mayavad. Ultimately, Smartavad is just Mayavad, but it's disguised in this culture of Vedic culture of trying to this culture of this caste system. So this Brahma this Smartavad is very dangerous actually, because in the name of the Vedas they're actually preaching Mayavadi. They dress up the Vedas, right? But they're only preaching Mayavadi. So when Krishna comes, he destroys both Smartavad and Mayavad. And because these conclusions are they're not for one who hears these statements by the Mayavadis, become more bewildered, and it's likened to poison actually. When you hear the descriptions of the Mayavad conclusions of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vedanta philosophy, it's poison actually. It's literally poison. You become bewildered and you become envious of the Supreme Lord. So already the topics of the Lord are confusing, but then you add Mayavadi to it. So you just see all these cheating personalities. You have so many cheaters. You have cheaters in the name of, I was just reading actually, that for karmis, they're Mahajan, they see great materialists as their Mahajans, right? And for demons, they see people like Hiranyakashipu and Ravana as a Mahajan. So we really don't know who's a real Mahajan. And it's mentioned in the, let me go to the...
The atheists see Darwin as their Mahajan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think Mahosa Prabhu was mentioning this verse. The thing is, we don't know who's Mahajan. We don't know who's actually following Vedic principles. But it's mentioned that a devotee's behavior establishes the true purpose of religious principles. So the thing is, you can read the Vedas, you can study Vedanta philosophy, right? But if you don't examine the character of devotee, you can never understand the true purpose of religious principles. And it's mentioned in connection with Madhavendra Puri. By studying Madhavendra Puri, you can understand the true purpose of religious principles by studying the character of pure devotees. So it's also mentioned, I think Mahosa was making this point too, how that the solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of an unadulterated self-realized person. So if you truly want to understand the import of Sastra, you have to go through the Guru, because within the Guru is the unadulterated truth of religious principles lies within the heart of the pure devotee. So we have to approach the Guru, and that is the means of attaining the unadulterated truth. Just like this fellow I was telling you at the ISKCON temple DC, he didn't go through the pure devotee. He went through his own mental speculation and tried to read the translation of the purport. He became bewildered by it. So if we really want to be religious, if we truly want to be knowers of the absolute truth, we have to go through this Guru Parampara system. It's no escaping it. It's really just no escaping it, actually. And we see that the Lord, his speaking is so eloquent, it's so beautiful, it's poetic. Everything the Lord says is poetic. And in the 4th canto, during the Daksha sacrifice, it mentions how when Narayana came on scene after the sacrifice, it's mentioned how everybody else's luster faded away and everybody stopped speaking just by seeing the Lord's presence. Just when the Lord became present, everybody else's luster faded away. And it's mentioned, I think, in the light of Bhagavat, that you have these glowworms. These glowworms in society, these bogus philosophers, these atheistic scientists, they're like glowworms in Kali Yuga, right? In Kali Yuga, there's full of glowworms. And that's the light. People are getting their truths from these glowworms. But when in the presence of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the devotees, that becomes like the sun. The glowworm has no potency in the presence of the sun, right? And we're trying to distribute the Srimad Bhagavatam. We're trying to give this Bhagavat to everybody because it completely annihilates these glowworms, these atheistic glowworms and philosophers. So we should be very enthusiastic to talk about these topics because these topics is directly in the light of Krishna. And as I said in this verse, everything else fades away. Everybody's body luster fades away in the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly with his devotees, everybody, all materialists, they become very mundane and ill compared to the pure devotees. And just a past time, Prabhupada was in the airport and somebody was saying, "Oh, this man is shining. He's shining." His luster, you can see the luster of a devotee. Everybody else just becomes mundane in relationship to him. And then in that next verse that I was mentioning in the Daksha, in Srimad Bhagavatam 4:724 is mentioned that although the mental scope of even demigods like Brahma was unable to comprehend the unlimited glories of the Supreme Lord, they were all able to perceive the transcendental form of the Supreme Person Godhead by His grace. Only by such grace could they offer their respectful prayers according to their different capacities. So actually, we can't even understand Krishna without mercy. With, unless we receive the mercy of Krishna, His grace, we will continuously be bewildered by the importance of the Vedanta philosophy. It's by the grace of the pure devotee. It's by the grace of Krishna that we're able to perceive the transcendental form. I think I was talking to my fiance about this yesterday. How, according to the form of Krishna, according to the form of Krishna that the person worships, because Krishna, he's in different forms. He's impersonal, Paramama, and Bhagavan. Even within that is different gradations. So the person who tries to worship Krishna's impersonal form, there's some bliss in there. There's some bliss in that. And then higher than that is Paramatma. There's some bliss in that. But the highest form is Krishna. And devotees, we receive the highest bliss because we are meditating on the highest form of Krishna. So according to the form of Krishna that we worship, to that degree of bliss we can obtain. But ultimately, like I said, this is all by the grace of the pure devotee. Because the pure devotee, by hearing these things, we actually become free from our sins. We become free from all anarthas. And it's interesting because in the Nectar Devotion, I was thinking about this, how the concept of sin is or in karma, is very confusing actually. But after doing some research, essentially, you have three types of bhaktas, or you have three types of devotees. You have the Nitya Siddha, you have the Sadhana Siddha, and then you have the
Nitya Bada.
No, you have that. It's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's Kripa Siddha, but it's also mentioned the Sadhaka. You have the sadhakas in the sadhana, right? So the sadhaka is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's different. They say Kripa Siddha, but in this one purport, Prabhupada talks about the sadhakas. So pretty much he's missing the point that Nitya Siddhas are eternally liberated. They're not affected by past karma whatsoever. The Sadhana Siddhas, they have attained liberation already, right? And because of that, that's their last birth. There's no more karma associated with them. But then you have the sadhakas. The sadhakas are those such as myself, who they begin the process of bhakti, and it's gradual. So although they've started the process of bhakti, their karma is not yet completely eradicated. So you see there's reverses in devotees' lives, and we're like, whoa, what's going on? Well, ultimately, it's a result of our past misdeeds. It's a famous example of the fan. So because once we become fully done with our bad karma, then actually we're not fit to be here. This material world is a place for people to live out their karma, right? So for us, we still have some karma associated with us. That's why certain things happen. However, Krishna will administer our karma in such a way to bring us closer to Him. Once we come to Krishna consciousness, we might get some results of our bad karma. However, Krishna will administer us the results of our bad karma in such a way to bring us closer to Him. Out of His causes mercy. And I'll read this in Nectar Devotion. There's a chapter called Expecting the Lord's Mercy. And Prabhupada says that a devotee should not expect immediate relief from the reactions of his past misdeeds. No conditioned soul is free from such reactionary experiences because material existence means continued suffering or enjoying of past activities. If one has finished his material activities, then there's no birth. And that's what I was talking about. That's Sadhana Siddha, that he's finished material activities. This is possible only when one begins Krishna conscious activities. And then Prabhupada says, as soon as one becomes perfect in Krishna conscious activities, he's not going to take birth again. But then Prabhupada says, a devotee who is not perfectly freed from the resulting activities should therefore continue to act in Krishna consciousness even though there may be so many impediments. So what does that mean? That means, like I said, you might still be getting some results of your past misdeeds even though you come into Krishna consciousness, right? But Prabhupada is saying, as long as we just become convinced of this philosophy, become convinced that I can attain perfection in this very life, then eventually we will be done with our past misdeeds. But we shouldn't continuously commit bad activities. The thing is, even in Christian consciousness, although the guru takes on your karma and sins, you shouldn't continue being binded in this cycle of karma. You shouldn't continuously be undergoing these fruits of activities. We're trying to stop this wheel of karma. We're trying to stop this. And back to another point, that these materialists, I was speaking about how the Lord, he's very eloquent when he speaks. Then everything he says is eloquent, even if it's very simple. Even every word every word Krishna says is eloquent. Every word the Krishna speaks can give you full transcendental wisdom if you fully realize the import of it. But you see that these materialists are speaking so many nonsense things, thinking what they're saying is important. Everybody in this material world actually thinks they're unique, right? But the only thing unique in this material world for each individual soul is their suffering. And this is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Shrocham shakshi sparshanam cha rasanam granam evacha distayam manasayam vishayam upasevate. That according to one's mind, then they develop certain senses. They get a certain attraction, a certain form of taste, touch, and everything. So they get a body according to their desires, right? So, and this is their suffering according to their desires. So the only thing unique about the individual soul is their suffering, but everybody thinks they're different. Everybody thinks, oh, I'm different. Actually, it's different. It's the same form of mind. The only thing that's unique is your suffering. We all have unique forms of suffering based on our unique karmic activities. Even scientists say that, every body, there might be twin bodies, but nothing is the same in those two bodies. Everything in those two bodies is different. Atomic, now I'm saying atomic makeup, right? So the only really thing that's unique in the material world is the body we get and the suffering we receive from it. That's the only thing unique. But however, a devotee was fully unique. A devotee is not of this material world, right? And that's why when a devotee speaks, as I was speaking earlier, that's when the devotee speaks topics of the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad, then everybody else their luster becomes dull in comparison to them. Because what he's saying is actually fully unique. It's full of variety. We can say the same thing every single day and see different realizations of it. It's not, we're chanting Hare Krishna every single day, but we're not getting tired of it. It's different realizations with the same name. Because it's not a material platform. That's why the four Kumars, when they heard the Krishna speak, they were bewildered. They were like, wow, I don't know what he's saying. But further in the chapter, then they started to understand better, and that's why they were able to start the Sampradaya. But the point is that we have to come under the clutches of the Guru's lotus feet, and by his grace, we can understand Krishna. We cannot jump straight to Krishna. We have to do it through the medium of the Guru Parampara. I think it was mentioned in my other class that the test of a person who's following the Guru Parampara, the test of that person is that they're bringing other people into Krishna consciousness, right? Because the potency of the Guru Parampara is such that when you speak the message of the previous acharyas, people cannot be helping attracted to it. But the reason why people aren't attracted to the movement now is, the caliber of people who are attracted, they want to ultimately be misleaded because the message is being diluted by your own misconceptions. You're not actually speaking. Actually, preaching is very easy. All we have to do is say what our Guru says. It's very easy. All we have to do is repeat what we read in Bhagavad Gita, what we read in Bhagavatam, and what our Guru says. That's all we have to do. It becomes difficult when we speculate. It's not so hard to preach, actually. Just say what you read. Of course you should ponder, and there's some scope for churning the nectars, but ultimately, just say what you hear, and there's potency in there. There's potency by hearing by speaking what you hear. That is the potency. That's the test of a person who's following the Guru Parampara. It's the potency of him bringing other people into Krishna consciousness. So, this pastime is very unique. Is very enlivening. Because you see, there's so much you can churn from this pastime. There's so much how, four Kumars, they were able to come to Lord's lotus feet even though they were impersonalists because they weren't offensive. The four Kumars not fully being able to understand the Lord after directly speaking with him, however, they still receive so much bliss from it. You see, even if you don't understand topics of Bhagavad Gita. Even if you don't understand it, it'll still purify you. Just go on listening. Go on. If you don't understand, just go on listening, go on reading. Naturally, it'll be revealed to you by Krishna's grace, ultimately, but it will be revealed to you in due course of time. All right, so I'm gonna stop my class here. I open up for any comments, questions, corrections, anything like that.
One question. We see that although we don't pay obeisances when we open the altar, if the spiritual master shows up, we should get off the seat and immediately bow down. We see that specifically with Indra. He didn't bow down to Brihaspati. He stayed on his seat, and then he lost everything. So it's just an important point that one should, even if one is speaking Srimad Bhagavatam, if the Guru shows up, you immediately get off your seat, because you never, you have to pay obeisance to the Guru. That's the duty of a disciple. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and then the Guru may indicate, keep speaking. Then one still doesn't get back on the seat. One stays below, because if the Guru sits and you're sitting above the Guru, then you're finished. So, because that's been there also. Sometimes Gurus in the past, they've had bigger Vyasasans than Srila Prabhupada, and they would sit right next, above Srila Prabhupada. So it's just important to remember that that if the Guru, that's just a point I thought, that one should immediately, if the Guru shows up, one immediately pays obeisances to the Guru.
Especially Balaram, this is the Lord. The horse is on the seat, and this is the Lord showing up, get up. It's not like some average boy.
Actually, even within that, I've heard, I don't know if y'all heard this, but if you're taking prashadam, you shouldn't offer obeisances if you're taking prashadam. It's an interesting dilemma, because you're taking prashadam, but the Guru shows up. What do you do? That's a tough one, It's what do you do? It's do you stop there? Because it said you shouldn't. If you're taking prashadam, you shouldn't give obeisances, right? But at the same time, the Guru walks, you have to give obeisances. So it's just a little thing. I really don't know, actually, what do you do? I don't know. I really don't know. It's a question for maybe Vishnu Chittabu or something. I don't know. But anyways, anybody else? Sharu. Oh, sorry. Rishi Kumar Prabhuji has something.
Oh, I was just going to mention, you were talking about having this, we should always, Shudra hankers and laments, but devotees should hanker and lament about, to hanker to read Prabhupada's books and lament if we don't have a taste for hearing. And that's also there. Chanakya Pandit also says that, because, the Brahmana, their main quality, they're supposed to be satisfied. It's one of the big things. But then one of the injunctions that Chanakya Pandit gives is that in one's studying, one should always be dissatisfied. That they haven't studied enough.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because it's seemingly this hankering could seem oh man, because people think if you're hankering, then you're not satisfied. But actually, by hankering, you receive the highest satisfaction. By hankering, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. By hankering to serve, by hankering to read the books and study, right, and lamenting, you actually get satisfaction from that, actually. So it's hard to, like I said, there might be contradictions, but unless you study Prabhupada's books, you might think, oh, there's so many contradictions, how do you understand it? But on the spiritual platform, there's no contradictions, right? Everything is harmonized. Everything's harmonized. When one hankers, like you're saying, when one hankers, it's for spiritual things, it actually does equate to satisfaction. So.
The main difference between lamenting on the material platform and on the spiritual platform. That's a good question. What's the difference? What's the difference between someone who hankers on the material platform and someone who hankers and laments on the spiritual platform?
One doesn't
One
have
brings Krishna.
top service, and the other one does.
Yeah. One's duty it doesn't hamper his duty. So even a Brahmana may sometimes feel a little lamentation, like you were saying, hanker after attaining some goal or something like that. I want to serve Krishna better in this way and that. But he doesn't stop his duties, and he doesn't let him get in the way of his duties. And so that's a very good quality to cultivate in our life, that sometimes it's just like that. Things are sometimes really tough, and you don't feel like this is really something that you should do, sometimes on the long term or in the short term, but that's just how life is, and you just got to go on, and sometimes those circumstances last a long time, and sometimes those circumstances are very short. So one has to, Prabhupada, I was just hearing Prabhupada this morning saying that, the yogis used to tolerate so much They would go into the snow, and meditate basically naked. In the summer, they would set a fire around and stuff. But we're not asking you to do that. We're only asking you to tolerate the four regulative principles: no sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no this. You cannot do this. Is it so difficult? What is the difficulty? So he was saying that to his disciples in that lecture. So I was just thinking that that's the difference when we're affected by some, even if it's material sometimes we're hankering and lamenting, but if we're not allowing it to get in the way of our service, then we can understand that we're getting some, there's some taste in devotional service that we're going on, that we're pushing on, even though sometimes you don't feel like chanting your rounds sometimes. You don't feel like reading Prabhupada's books sometimes. It's just the nature of our material circumstance. That's just the reality of it. We should be enthusiastic and all that, but we're just not. But the fact that we make it a point, even though in those circumstances that we go on, then we can expect mercy from the Acharya or the Guru, because we're still putting aside our own likes and dislikes to try to please the Guru, to try to follow the instruction, despite of whether we want to do it or not. We're just doing it for the pleasure of the Guru. We may not even be into it, but as Prabhupada says, you do it and the enthusiasm will come, and we'll feel that. Sometimes we don't feel like reading, and then we read it, and you're like, oh man, I really want, I wish I read more in the past, or I wish I could read more. So it can be like that also. Sorry. Yes.
I was just thinking, based on what you're saying, I was just thinking, made me think about when Prabhupada stopped manifesting his pastimes on this planet. Prabhupada went to, transitioned to another, universe. I don't know how to say it without being offensive, but yeah, he stopped manifesting his pastimes. Some of his disciples, they were on books. I think it's by HG Prabhu. He was saying how actually he was lamenting that his spiritual master left. However, like you're saying, he was more enthusiastic to distribute books. Mm-hmm. So it didn't impede him. But then you see on the other side, there were some disciples, they lamented so much that they just completely stopped chanting. They just completely gave it up. So that's what you say, on one end, one lamentation was actually spiritual because they were enthused to do their duty, as you were saying. And another lamentation, they materialized the body of Srila Prabhupada, and they didn't actually continue their duty because the lamenting wasn't proper. You're lamenting, your guru left, but like Chandan is saying, if your lamenting is not leading you to perform your duty better, then it's ultimately just material.
Krishna says that Arjuna, Asocyananda Sochastam, Pragyavadam Subhasati, Gatasana Gatasam Cha, Nanusochanti Pandita, that you're lamenting for that which is not worth lamenting for. That which is, and what does he say? Gatatsun Cha, Nanusochanti Panditaha, that anyone who's a learned person, you will Pragyavadangscha Bhashasi, that you're speaking like a learned man, but actually you're lamenting for that which is not worth it. And so you're stopping your duty. Krishna specifically speaks all this because Arjuna wants to stop doing his duty. Therefore he calls him all these names and says that you're an Arya, that you're not acting like an Aryan, that this is not the quality of an Aryan, that this only leads to defamation, that infamy will overcome you. So purely on the basis, why? Because he wasn't going to perform his duty because he was overcome by his feelings. He may have had those feelings, but if he went on with his duty, Krishna wouldn't have said all those things. And so, just in some points.
When King Puranjana takes his second birth as a woman, as the daughter of Vidyadhar, I don't remember that king's name exactly, but when he takes his birth as a woman, and he's lamenting, what was that?
Malyadwaj?
Malyadwaj was that was the husband.
Oh.
That
Some of the name of King Puranjana.
Vidyadhara.
Who?
Vidyadhara.
Who you talking about? Who are you talking about?
Anyways, he was so. And King Puranjana in his second birth, basically as a woman, is lamenting over the death of King Malyadhwaj. That's the king's name. That was her husband's name, and that whole that string of purports, Prabhupada was saying it's instructional, like this is how the disciples should feel and act once the spiritual master leaves. But he also makes a point that the only point for them living, going forward, should be to fulfill and act in the guru's instruction, and one should be prepared to give up their body as long as they're not acting in that regard. So that was pretty instructional. There was something else I was going to say in regards to your point that you made. Arjuna not wanting to carry out his prescribed duties. Anyways, I don't quite remember it, but that point you also made about Smartavad being covered, Mayavad. I thought it was interesting because that's been a theme, understanding the importance of Vedic culture, respect for brahmanas, but even if you're just attached to Vedic culture, but it's not with the proper understanding that it should be towards acting in sacrifice for Lord Vishnu, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's it's just like that point's missed. There's the verse, karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tardatan aparadhayabhyo yo bhunkte stena eva saha. And that's saying that the prescribed duties, regulated activities are described in the Vedas, but the Vedas directly emanate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And so he's manifest I mixed up those two verses, the last two lines. Anyways, he's basically saying that Krishna is like non-different from those acts of sacrifice, that he's manifest within that. But if one tries to carry those regulated activities out without understanding like what's the purpose or reason behind them, it's like the whole freaking point is missed.
Yeah, it actually becomes when you become too attached to Varnashram Dharma system without proper understanding of of Krishna being behind, it just becomes sense gratification. Actually, you get sense gratification out of saying, yes, I am this, I am that, I'm this caste, I'm that caste. It's another form of material sense gratification. Anything else?
Prabhu, you were explaining about Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Can you come with that again, Prabhu?
No, I was saying, Charu Deshman just mentioned it, but he was making the point how the washerman that Krishna killed in that Leela, the washerman represents Smartavad, and then Kamsa represents Mayavad, and then he makes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati makes a point that, this is all in his lecture. I heard this by Gumaraj. I can send it to you. How Krishna first came to covered Mayavad, then he killed Mayavad.
Okay, Prabhu.
Can I ask a quick question? Because you talked about devotees not having karma, I think.
Yeah, it's three different types of devotees. Yeah.
No, well, I think you read a purport from like.
Yeah, nectar devotion.
You said that we don't have karma, but we're not. Maybe I missed.
No. So unless you are fully on the pure platform, then we're still gonna have reactions to our past misdeeds. Like this example of the fan, and you take it out. So Prabhupada is saying in this that a devotee should not. He literally says, Prabhupada says, a devotee should not expect immediate relief from the reaction of his past misdeeds. So that's like a sadhaka. That's like a new devotee, you got initiated or whatever. You're gonna have some reactions to your past misdeeds, okay? But because you're situated rightly, if you can continue, eventually the fan will stop. But if you plug out and you start going back into committing like abominable activities, then the fan just keeps going and going and going. But Prabhupada's making the point. He says that no conditioned soul is free from reaction experience because material existence means continuous suffering. If one has finished material activities, there's no more birth. So that's sadhana siddha. Somebody who's completely he's not necessarily nijya siddha, he came down, but he performed his sadhana perfectly. Now he's liberated. So once you perform your sadhana perfectly and become liberated, then you don't take any more birth. Then at that point, there's no more karma. That's your last birth. That makes sense?
There's one Brahmin. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's one Brahmana in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that gets chastised as being a second Roma Harshana.
Yeah, what was that? I was thinking about that. I forget about that.
Narnava Mishra, he's a priest in Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's home, and he didn't
Yeah,
offer
yeah, yeah, yeah.
respect when Miniketana Ramdas comes there, and
Yeah,
Miniketana Ramdas, he's a great devotee of Lord Nityananda. He's glorified in the Adi Leela that he made a flute out of a stick with 16 knots.
that's
There's
pretty
just a
wild.
verse that just explains that. So I
That's
don't.
pretty wild. Yeah, yeah.
It's
I
kind of
remember that.
interesting, but
That's in the
he,
Adi Leela.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I remember
I
that.
don't really know all the import of what that means, but he, when he showed up at the home, this priest didn't offer respect to him because it was like a subtle, it was a sign of something deeper that priest didn't, you know,
Yeah,
fully respect Lord Nityananda. So then he
yeah,
gets
exactly.
chastised as being a second Ramaharshan.
That's a good point. Yeah, this Vedic culture. I mean, that book is coming out soon. The Vaishnava culture and etiquette book. You
And
know.
if we read that book, then we won't become a third Ramaharshan.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many Roman Harshanas now in this movement, bro. Yeah, yeah. It is like they might see a pure devotee, and because of their political views, they won't bow down to him. It's really ridiculous. But what to
Hare
do?
Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Yati Chaitanya Prabhu.
Prabhu, I was listening one lecture of Mukundadatta Prabhu. He was uh, glorifying the pastimes of Tamal Krishna Maharaj. So there is one pastime that Tamal Krishna Maharaj was taking prasad. So meanwhile, Srila Prabhupada called him for something. I don't know the exact situation. But Tamal Krishna Maharaj said that say to Prabhupada that I am taking prasad, so I won't come. So in that past time, Tamal Mukundadatta Prabhu was mentioning that Tamal Krishna Maharaj was very, I mean, he's very keen to give respect to prasadam. That if even Guru calls or Guru comes, we should give the respect to prasad. So when you are explaining that even Guru comes, we should offer obeisances. So how to relate this pastime?
I think that was literally. You might have not heard, but that's what I was saying in the beginning of questions and answers. How that's something that I think we should actually consider a rule. Like, because
Mm.
that's a cultural thing. Is like it's an etiquette thing. Is yeah. If we're taking prasad and the guru walks in, what do we do? I don't know. I'm be honest. I don't know. That's
Is there scope for transgressing etiquette?
Prabhu. I'm not because I don't know Prabhu. I'm not going to speak on it, but I really don't know. I mean,
Generally, no.
if Chandan knows or like Rishi Kumar Prabhu knows, I really don't know. I don't want to say yes. You know,
What did Chandra Prabhu say?
Generally,
he says
if you transgress etiquette, no. Generally, no. So just like sometimes even Prabhupada disciples will come and we're taking prasadam, we'll wait until we wash up to pay obeisances. So with the Guru, it's also the same. Actually, Guru Maharaj actually mentioned he was walking into the temple room, and we were all paying obeisance, and they said technically you shouldn't do that.
yeah. It
Because
says
in
in
front of
the
the
devotion.
in front of the deity, you shouldn't do that. So he was even mentioning that to us at one point. So, but while giving, you just shouldn't. There's also so you have to understand there's like multiple etiquettes there. So, but if you're sitting on the Vyasasana and you're speaking, you're sitting above the Guru.
Yeah.
So you got to get down.
But I also know that Guru Maharaj came in the bathroom. We shouldn't give obeisances in our countries. But I mean,
Yeah.
Guru came back. But then we gave obeisances, and I don't think he said anything. So then it's like it's confusing. It's
There's a lot of
confusing.
things he may say, not
It's
say
confusing
something.
because like he
else.
said that, but in the bathroom we're not supposed to give obeisances, and then we do it, and it's like.
It's really awkward in the bathroom.
The thing is, if we don't give obeisances, then it's like, dang, I didn't give obeisances. Guru Maharaj is like, I don't damn about this gum shit. I don't want to bow down. It's like,
Yeah, there's multiple.
so it's like it's actually it's very nuanced and confusing. I don't want to speak on it because I don't really know too much about that specific.
Well, I was gonna say, like, in terms of like scope for transgressing, like you come in, for example, it's not like you get. For example, when I was going through the Bhakta program and you were telling me, like, if I told you everything you were doing wrong, you wouldn't know how to walk even. Like, you would just like maybe not how to walk, but it's like there's so many things that like could be like taught and corrected. But if I told you all at once, it's just like a bit much, you know. So I feel like, especially when even if someone's been in, without coming from like that background, it's like, not that it's like it's okay to never take to understanding etiquette and whatnot. But that understanding, I think, is also kind of there. It's like, okay, like this guy's coming from like a militia background. He probably doesn't know everything about Vedic, etiquette and culture and whatnot. So in that sense, maybe I would expect that there would be some type of scope, because like here's this person who's endeavoring and trying Krishna consciousness. They don't know everything about, offering obeisances, this, that, the other. But it's like, not that I don't think it's like if one is aware of it and then they still transgress it, that just seems to be like a completely and totally different thing. It's like I don't think there's scope for that. That would be my understanding. I mean, Prabhu.
Yeah, there's like, it's complicated.
It's very complicated.
There's also like there's devotees, who are, because we're ultimately, there's the Raganuga platform where there are advanced devotees who are like devotees who are advanced. Like it's understood that they should discriminate and know the qualification for certain things. Like for instance, there was an eclipse a long time ago. I was in Mahotsa Prabhu, and we really wanted to go take darshan of Radha Govinda, but we were in the eclipse, but we were on Sankirtan, and Vishwachibru was like Mahotsa's like, we're on Sankirtan, like, can we go? And he's like, well, technically you're supposed to, like shower Kajamuchi, but it's up to you to decide, and we didn't go. We ended up didn't go, So I guess there are instances like that as well.
Yeah, one has to see. One has to see. Just like, after, generally, Guru Maharaj was even mentioning that when you go in front of the deities, you shouldn't go with pants and shirt. Even if you're going on Sankirtan, he said that in the class. He said, better you go pay obeisances first, change, and then go. And there's circumstances where, okay, like, we just, whatever, but generally it's not nice to present yourself in front of the deities like that. When Muchi just, other times also though, in Mangal Arati, you stand in the back. When you're Muchi, so you come, but you stand in the back. So that's another way to do it also. So there's like different things. It's complicated. That's why that Vaishnava etiquette book is so important.
Got it. Anything else? Don't worry, when this Vaishnava etiquette book drops, we'll have all the answers.
You want to talk about Berlin before?
Turn it live off?
Yeah, okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.